Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. Congratulations on your film. I really enjoyed Sally Get the Potatoes. Um, I love the name, by the way, as well.
It's hard to forget. So it's at least something we've got going for us in the festival circuit.
Right. No, that's very true. How many movies have the word potatoes in it, right? But
Not
it's
enough.
perfect. No, no. That's the correct answer. No, but it's perfect for the film. So I'd love to hear, how you originally got started. This is your first short. This is your first film, right? That you've made. But you started off as a actor when
I did.
as a child actor. So what was that? What was that like?
Yeah, so I'm from Long Island originally. I grew up pretty bare bones household, single mom, me and my sibling, and the way we spent time together was by going to the theater and doing shows. And I grew up backstage. And when I was a tween, my mom thought, well, what would it be like to take you into the city and try to get you an audition for a movie or a bigger show? And so this was something that her and I did together, which was such a fun bonding experience. And we would go into Penn Station and get backstage newspaper. This was before the online publication, and
Right.
circle the auditions on the way home. And so I booked my first feature when I was 14. I'd done a short that actually went to Sundance by Craig McNeil, who's now working really a lot of horror stuff that he does. He's amazing. And so I got the bug and I got on set and I said, this is incredible and I want to be on set all the time. And then I ended up going to school for musical theater. There's not a ton of acting on camera programs when it comes to universities. And I had still been pursuing my musical theater career at the time. So I went to Pace University and I studied there, and they had a lot of great curriculum like directing and acting for the camera. So it was really comprehensive. And then I ended up working for a company called Applause New York for 10 years. And that's really how this all happened. Applause is a performing arts studio on the Upper East Side, and they teach music, theater, film, and dance to kids. And when I came in, I was a musical theater teacher, but I immediately gravitated toward the film program, and they were thrilled because not everyone in their teacher roster wanted to be on the film side of things. So I got to get my 10,000 hours in of directing and writing and creating films with kids. And we had a YouTube channel that went viral, which was a really exciting time for us and gave us a lot of leverage to be able to grow the company in a really big way. So at the time we had maybe 4 or 5 film classes, and then I was in charge of growing it to 15 film classes at one point. And how would the operations work for that? And also how would we make sure the content was really exciting and fresh and innovative? And so all of that kind of combined to then lead me to where I am today. And I'm currently director of production at a startup called Lit Video Books, where we make documentary versions of nonfiction books. And I've been able to, like I said, kind of take each step of my journey along with me. But I think the fact that I started as an actor is a real asset. And I love working with actors and especially children. As a child who grew up on sets, it's really rewarding for me.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's a very I mean, it's wonderful your trajectory, how everything you did kind of moved to your next kind of step in your career. Um, so would you say, when you were studying in school, you kind of got the director bug? As you said, you got, you got the musical theater when you were younger. Is that definitely where you see yourself going forward, as being like a director more so than, going back to musical theater or being an actor?
I mean, in the dream world, we get the balance of doing a little bit of everything.
Right.
So never say never. I still live in New York, so Broadway is just a train ride away. And of course, I'm a huge fan always. But I do think that directing is something that I find to be the most rewarding thing I found so far. I have had all of this experience now managing people and being able to build departments and businesses. And when I started directing, I realized the skills are really transferable. And it's so funny. And thank you for saying all of those steps led to each other, because I think when you're in those steps when you're younger, you're not sure where you're going, you're not sure if
Right.
what you're doing is going to actually be valuable, and then you get to the point where you want to be and you look back and go, my restaurant job was really valuable, I learned so much
Right.
there, and
Right.
my babysitting job was really valuable, that I took a good amount with me. And
Yeah.
so it's a beautiful thing, and you have to trust in the process. You also have to trust in your gut, knowing that where you're at might be giving you something new, or you're learning something that you can take with you, or learning what you don't like. That's a huge part, I think, of
Yeah.
finding our careers. And
Right.
what I really love is I love being on set and I love managing people. And I love to be able to put a great team of people together and say, do your best work and let's all make it together. Don't Definitely don't run a dictatorship of any kind. This is always a collaborative process down to my PAs. And I think being able to lead with that in this industry that was often not always the case, maybe a
Yeah.
bit more of a hierarchy that had really strict and intense work environments. I don't believe in leading with fear. I think that creates a culture that no one will ever do their best work in. They might do good work, but I don't think it allows for the maximization of what people's potential are. So being able to be in that position is both rewarding and also I feel like I'm contributing in some way to this industry I believe in so much, but wasn't always often the case. And so I'm hopeful that I'll be able to keep directing. I also love producing, so finding a balance between the two. And I now have a manager for writing and directing, so I also am writing and trying to keep myself fresh and developing both my own voice and learning. I'm a sponge. I love to learn. I love to grow. I'm never done learning. So having her has been incredible so far because she encourages me to keep on deadlines with projects and really make sure that I'm educating myself as a writer as well. And this all comes back to story. And starting as an actor, we started with story. What does your character want? How are they going to get it? That's what I'm doing as a writer. What does the character want? How are they going to get it? And then I get on set as director or producer when you're having to make creative budget decisions or find a way through a really tight scene that you don't have a ton of time for. And I think the roots of just story and those basic elements are really transferable, and it just depends on where you feel most comfortable in the spot on the set.
Right. That's a wonderful perspective. All of that was, from managing and into the last thing you said. And I agree, wholeheartedly as well, as far as, managing and, just also it does come down to story. And I'd love to hear how this story for this film kind of originated.
So the backstory is pretty fun. I teach a high school filmmaker experience class at Applause. I'm still actually teaching. I'm not there full time anymore, but that's the one class I held on to. And when we are in class, we're constantly growing ourselves, both as teachers, but also trying to get the students to better their skills. And there was one day that they were struggling with what to write about. I think we had given them a writing exercise and they were having a hard time figuring out how to come up with something they wanted to say. And we were encouraging them if they found their own voice or if they had something they wanted to share with the world, they could do it through a capacity. It could be a prop or a location or a character or a silly line of dialogue. And so we were doing an exercise with them to be like, write a story that takes place in a barn, write a story that has a grandpa in it. And now let's come up with some lines of dialogue. Someone throw out a funny line of dialogue or something interesting. Just what's a line of dialogue we could all put in our script. And one of my students at the time, Morgan Zoya, shouted, "Sally, get the potatoes." And everyone laughed. It was clever. It's interesting. It's specific. And they went to move on from this. But I said, no, I think there's something there. That struck a chord with me. And I'm going to do this myself. I'll do the exercise too with you. I'll go home. I'll write a script. I'll show you what I mean, just to give you some inspiration that if I know what I want to say, I can put the line, "Sally, get the potatoes" in there. It can all be shaped around this. And so I wrote the scripts and I brought it back to them and I said, okay, we get what you're saying. This is actually pretty good. And we see where the voice and the tone came through. And we didn't end up making the film that semester, but when the students came back for the next summer, they had gone to film school. Two of my students, Morgan and Leela Malati, they'd come home and they said, "Whatever happened to that Sally script? We really liked that. We want to make something this summer. Would you want to make it?" And I said, "Sure, find me a location with 18 rooms and a laundry room and a huge hallway and a house that would be elegant enough that a housekeeper would need to work in it." And in 2 days, they brought me a location and said, "We have it secured for the end of August." And
Wow.
this is a beautiful turning point because all of a sudden the teacher becomes the student. And I was then put in the spotlight to go, okay, I guess I have to make my movie if they're really committed to this. And it was a wonderful experience to do together. But when it comes to the actual inspiration of the story, I've always been really interested in generational relationships between children and adults. And it's interesting because even as I reflect back to my own childhood, I loved watching movies that had one kid and a bunch of adults in it. And I think it was a bit reflective of my childhood. I grew up as the youngest in my family, and I was often going to theater rehearsals or hanging out backstage with mostly adult actors. And I think I had to learn pretty quickly how to participate if I wanted to hang and be included. And this transition that we all go through is one of the only real inherent human conditions that we have. Of course, our environment, circumstances, our familial makeup will all influence that. But if we are currently standing on this earth as an adult, as far as I know, we were all once children, unless there's robots walking around, in which case, come find me.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's something that I think inherently connects us all. And I had also been working on the Upper East Side for a long time, and I did not grow up with a whole lot. And I think watching these kids from these very affluent families, to be honest, was so eye-opening for me, because as a little kid who didn't have a lot, you wonder if money would change everything and make everything better. And of course, it does make some things better. We cannot ignore that. But what I really took away was that these kids are still just kids who have to learn how to live in the world, and their parents are doing their best and their siblings are doing their best. But there's not really there wasn't this big eye-opening experience of like, well, the money gave them all of these wonderful things that I just would never have.
Right.
And I think that was really, it was a peaceful moment for me to be able to let go of some of those wants and wishes from my childhood, but also a curiosity of, well, if they have all of this, then what does that mean for their lives? And how do they
Right.
operate in the world? And with shows like Succession and White Lotus, there's obviously something that we're all interested in about this right now. And I think this science of happiness stuff that has come out a lot in the last 5 years, and not always reflecting your billionaire status as being the people that find themselves to be most happy in the world.
Yeah.
All of that is just, I'm curious. I'm a curious person. And when I'm curious about something, I think I like to then take a character and explore it. And so that's really what this film was inspired by.
Oh, yeah, and that's a very interesting story. I love, you said constantly love to learn, and the teacher becomes a student. I think that that's just such a wonderful message, and also, um, it's just it's always lovely to hear of things like this happening in a very organic way. And I think it's also inspirational for people to hear, people that want to do what you're doing and make a film, and also that's great advice. Like, maybe people watching this will be like, I'm gonna come up with a random saying, or make it in a barn, or grandpa. That's really wonderful writing advice as well. Um, so you wrote the script for the class, then there was some time, and then you made it. Was there any shift in the story from what it originally was to what it ended up being in the movie, or was it pretty much like you went exactly as you had first written it?
There were some shifts, and Leela and Morgan, who are both 20 years old, they were 19 last summer when we made this. They were so helpful in the note process because, and I think this was also a good learning lesson for me. They identified so many areas in the script that needed attention, and they would come with their own ideas. But as the writer, I could kind of then see through going, okay, I still need to take ownership of this creatively. And I see why they're suggesting these ideas, but I also see why they're giving the note. And I didn't necessarily agree with their ideas, but I agreed once I de-layered
Mhm.
their ideas, what the notes were. And at first, all of Sally's siblings were much younger, and they had a great recommendation to make them older, make her even more isolated. I think upping
Yeah.
the stakes and all of this was a really great piece of feedback that they had. And there were certainly some structural things where, like, she takes a ride in this laundry basket. For those who haven't seen this film, she takes an unexpected ride in a laundry basket through her house that the housekeeper pushes, and she's spying on her family members one by one and learning the secrets that they're hiding, both from her and from each other, and really from themselves as well. And so the mechanics of that, when you look at a script, you want to think about a short film and make sure that there's some story engine that's happening pretty quickly off the top. And we needed to get her in the basket faster was something that ended up happening. And so it's a good learning lesson as well, because that really ended up happening in the edit versus it was, we had some stuff that we ended up cutting out, but it was a good lesson for me as well to remember, like, go back to those basics when you're writing. Make sure that by a certain page, things are happening.
Right.
Follow Sid Field's screenplay to as much of it, as it helps you or doesn't help you. But there are certain story things that I think with a short just do need to hit. It's such an odd time and format for a film and a story. And so all that being said, I will say, like, I think the bones of it kept, but I think the maturity extended a bit. We originally wrote this to potentially be filmed in class, so it wasn't as, the things that we were exploring weren't as deep.
Yeah.
And so we just tried to take each moment and elaborate on what the most high stakes version of this would be, but in a world that still is going to present as a film that perhaps 12 and older could watch. I didn't want to, we weren't going so hard into things that would be upsetting to anyone in that age group, but more of an exploration and a curiosity. And the goal is to have teens, tweens, moms, grandmas,
Right.
parents, any gender, sit down, watch this film together, and all get something out of it. And so we were trying to just find ways to make sure that those story beats really resonated with each age group and person that might be identifying with this film.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that. First of all, I thought it was fantastic. I thought, it was beautifully shot. Loved all the characters. I really love that you put it in this holiday atmosphere, which made perfect sense for people to be, everybody to be around. But also I just love the idea of her kind of discovering each aspect of the family. So I thought it was really well done. And I know I'm taking up a lot of your time, so I'll be wrapping it up soon. But I'm just wondering, as someone that did work as a young actor, did that give you, did that, you think that helped in casting for this main character and also working with her on this film, that experience?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, well, she's also the youngest in her family, which we didn't know obviously when we were first going into this, but there were certain things that our star, Kinley Hyman, she is a revelation. What a gracious actress at the age of 6 she is to give us
Yeah,
so many
she has such a presence too.
moments. Yeah, just incredible. And I think when I was looking for Sally, I was really looking for that breakout star like Dakota Fanning or
Right.
Brooklyn Prince, these little bundles of emotion and authenticity. And I think I also wanted to make sure it was someone that could feel really comfortable on set with me, because keeping our kids safe on sets is something that I'm extremely passionate about. And
Right.
obviously, after Quiet on Set, we all need to take a closer look at the way that we're treating children and parents alike. And so going into this was a real priority to me that both she and her mom, who was on set with her the whole time, felt really taken care of, informed to an extent. Kinley doesn't know what happens in the movie, but we were able to shoot it creatively. She is hiding in this laundry basket quite a bit, but we didn't need to shoot her in the basket in those rooms. So it was also just, you're ever scheduling out a kid, this was a great device to be able to do so, because we could wrap her early and send her on the way and film, knowing that the cut would work together with her in there, but
Right.
she didn't have to be present for those scenes. And so I
Smart.
was looking for a kid who was definitely could take feedback. We did some callbacks, and certainly I worked them in the room just to see how they responded to me, both energy wise, like making sure that they weren't feeling tense or like this wasn't the right match, as well as their just capability to play. This is a character in which we watch her play a lot in the beginning of the film, and that's what's so heartbreaking is by the end she's not playing anymore. And
Yeah.
the child that we needed was someone who could both authentically just play on her own, being herself, and also then find those moments of depth. And it's a little bit of a needle in a haystack. We found beautiful actresses, and it was, I wish I could have cast all of them for different reasons, but Kinley really just brought this spark and this sense of self. She's so reassured as her own human being at this young age. We're all in awe of her. I'm really like props to the whole family. Whatever they're
Right.
doing with her is really working. And she was just so curious about Sally as well. And I think that last curiosity really came back to my own, the way I make art and the way that I like to proceed in the world. And she would say things like, they just treat Sally like a little doll. She's like a little prop to them. They don't even care what she thinks. And this is a 6-year-old who's
Yeah, right.
interpreting a character off the page who can't even read yet. We're feeding her the lines, and I'm telling her the story of what she's going
And she's
through.
that
But
perceptive. Yeah. That's
yeah,
great.
and you can't teach that. That's just something that I think you need to suss out from just knowing what to ask. And like I said, it was more of like a just general conversation that I was trying to have with them early on, and I couldn't be more thrilled with who we found, and I hope to keep working with her. She really is just so special, and I'm excited for the world to see her.
Yeah. Well, again, congratulations on the film. I know you have the fest coming up. When is it? Is it not tonight or like when's the
Yes.
okay.
Yeah,
Um,
I can announce a few festivals. So we've got Dances with Films that we're out in LA right now. We are
okay.
premiering Sunday, June 23rd, 4:15 at the Chinese Theater. We might add a second screening because I believe our block is pretty close to capacity. So If you
Nice.
can follow us on Instagram at Sally Get the Potatoes Film, you can certainly see when and where screenings will be happening. And we also have the Female Eye Film Festival that we can now announce in Toronto in July. We're on the opening night shorts for that. So any of our Canadian listeners, definitely check us out there. And then we'll be heading to Cape Cod for the Woods Hole Film Festival in early August.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations. Are you working on anything else in the meantime? Or just kind of enjoying this run, you know?
No, I'm a crazy person who likes to keep a lot of balls in the air. And I will say, going into this process, if there are any filmmakers out there who are just still a little stuck in how to do this, just I got the best advice, which is just you have to jump and do it, and you have to throw a million things in the air and see what sticks. And so I've been trying to do that, and it's working, which is thrilling. It doesn't always work as fast as you would want, but I am producing a couple of things this summer. I do like producing as well. It keeps my network open. It keeps me on my toes. I like the way that I also love being on set, so it gets me on set. And I am writing, so I'm writing a gymnastics feature. Kinley is actually an incredible gymnast. Little known fact about her: check out her Instagram; it's pretty incredible. And we were talking on set. She didn't know anything about Tanya Harding, but I was telling her a little bit about the plot of By Tanya in a safe way once again.
Yeah, right.
And I was kind of inspired by this idea of this world of gymnastics, and obviously leading into the Olympics. I've always been a big gymnastics fan. And more than anything, though, there's a really interesting thing that's happening with the way that these young gymnasts train at such an early age, and their actual career trajectory being so short. They can't go on to do this for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of them do. Oksana Chutsanova, she's incredible. She's a vaulter who's like well into her 50s at this point. But there are such interesting layers to explore there between children and adults. These coaches who are coaching them, and the parents who are feeding into this incredibly hard system of child athletics, which so many parents go through. And then these little kids who are just so hungry for this thing, but they're not exactly sure where it's going to lead, because
Right.
the fact is most of them are not going to be Olympic gymnasts. And so I don't know, I'm exploring right now. I'm being curious, I'm doing research, and it's fun to think about maybe working with Kinley again in some capacity and getting to highlight that skill of hers as well, because it really is, it's pretty impressive what she can do.
Well, that's amazing. I look forward to seeing what you do next, and I'm wishing you the best of luck at the festivals. And thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. This has been a joy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.